A battle has broken out in the far north. King Heinrich has declared war on his own people. He sent his army to wage war on the poor, only to bring wealth and lots of gold to the rich, and to give himself even more power, so that he can take over all of the European countries. And because of that, now there's all-out war breaking out everywhere. But the people won't stand for this. They're now practicing self-defense in case their villages are raided by an army or tribe. So many lives have been lost from the bloodshed. The king's army went in and burnt our towns and villages down. All you could see was buildings set on fire, engulfed in flames. The smoke that filled the air smelled like brimstone, and all you could hear was the screams of people crying out for help. It was obvious that the Dark Ages were back. After a while, the fire started to fade, leaving behind an eerie silence that no one had ever heard before. The ground was covered in ash, buildings had collapsed, and bodies laid lifeless on the ground. In the days following the terrible attack, word spread across the land. The Queen of France, Alice, received word from her guards that an attack on her kingdom was imminent. Desperate to try and stop it, she ordered her guards to secure the gates as a deterrent. But unfortunately, things took a turn for the worse. The king's army invaded France. Another battle broke out in the countryside. Men were on horses fighting with swords. You could hear the clash coming from the swords with each hit. Some screamed as they fell to the ground dead, and others were badly injured. It was pure chaos, and one of the worst battles in France's history. In the days following the battle, there was a mourning period in which people held vigils in remembrance of the brave knights who fought to protect the people of France. But with half of the Queen's army nearly destroyed, she couldn't help but feel saddened for the huge loss of life and devastation her country just went through. She was angry over what the king had done. She knew it was just a matter of time before things got worse and needed to put an end to his reign of power. Each day, people went to the Catholic Church to pray for the war to stop and for King Heinrich's reign of power to end. All they wanted was peace, love, and happiness. But little did they know how much worse things were about to get. While France was recovering from the terrible attack from King Heinrich's army, another storm was brewing in the far north. King Heinrich unleashed even more pain and suffering. He dressed in his black cloak with the Holy Cross in his hand and prayed for the devil to come and cause chaos all throughout the world. All of Europe found out what King Heinrich had done, and just like that, evil swept across the land. The devil was given the name Lucifer and got his hands on the most powerful and sacred object in the world, the Holy Sword. In the early days, the sword had divine energy. The previous owner of the sword was given immortality, the power to heal, strength, and wisdom. But now it's cursed. With the Holy Sword now in Lucifer's possession, he is now a dark god, and he is able to cause chaos throughout the world. He just possessed King Heinrich. And now, with King Heinrich possessed, Lucifer is able to control him. King Heinrich sent his army to the city of Rome, Italy, and invaded it, just like he did with France. First, the two armies fought to the death. Men were on horses fighting with swords. Many of them perished in agony. The king and queen were thrown out of power, and the balance between good and evil were lost. With the seasons changing and winter fastly approaching, everyone knew that the fight for survival was just about to begin. Winter had arrived, and things only got worse. Villages were now being raided by a new enemy, tribes from the far north. The tribes stole lots of food, clothing, and gold. At this point, this was turning into a wider war. The villagers were clearly angry with the fact that the tribes just went in and stole from them. They had no choice but to journey into the night. The ground was covered in snow, and it was brutally cold. But they knew the only way that they were going to survive the dark and cold winter was to go to the far north and bring the fight to the tribes. The journey to the far north came with major risks. Being out in the cold increased the chances of hypothermia, frostbite, and death. So every time one of the villagers felt too cold, they would start a fire to keep warm, and then once they were warmed up enough, they would continue the journey. But little did they know how big and powerful the northern tribe would be. Eventually, the villagers reached the far north, and what they found shocked them. The tribe that invaded their village had a fortress surrounding their city, and they were ruled by Heinrich's older brother, King Clovis. Back in the early days, before King Clovis became the king of the far north, he was the prince, and he was supposed to get married with the princess. But unfortunately, he had other plans. He cast a curse on the princess, and just like that, the princess fell into a deep sleep, never to be awakened again. His mother and father found out what had happened. The citizens of the far north were shocked and outraged. This was just the beginning of King Clovis's reign of power. He removed his mother and father from the kingdom and took over the throne. Ever since then, he's been sending tribes to villages to steal lots of gold and valuables. He has nothing but hate and anger in him. All he craves is negativity, the suffering of other people, and lots of power. Not knowing the dangers they were in, they pressed on and were immediately spotted by one of the guards. What happened next was pure chaos. The gates opened, and the huge army charged at the villagers on horses with swords, screaming. They had no other option but to battle it out with King Clovis's army. Meanwhile, in France, Queen Alice was informed by one of her guards about the situation between the villagers and King Clovis's army. She knew that if she didn't put an end to this battle, King Clovis could very well become the next tyrant, just like King Heinrich. She ordered her guard to round up her army and send them to the far north to put an end to the battle. And off they went, marching to the far north. Eventually, they reached the battlefield, where chaos was still breaking out. They didn't hesitate, though. They rammed their horses into Clovis's army, and they fought with their swords. They weren't just fighting to end the battle, they were also fighting to end the war, bring peace back to Europe, and restore the balance between good and evil. A lot of Clovis's army perished because Alice's army was too strong. Clovis didn't stand a chance. He ended getting thrown out of power and was taken back to France to face punishment over the suffering he caused to so many people. With all of King Clovis's army destroyed, there was a sense of relief with the fact there wouldn't be any other raids from the far north. The villagers and Queen Alice's army knew they were getting closer to restoring the balance between good and evil and bringing peace back to Europe. But there was only one problem. King Heinrich was still possessed. Lucifer was still at large with the Holy Sword, and it was only a matter of time before Lucifer brings hell and suffering to the modern world.
Spring had arrived, and the villagers were recovering after their long and treacherous journey to the far north to defeat the northern tribe and throw King Clovis out of power. For a few months, everything was normal. The villagers went back to their daily activities. But things would quickly change for the worse. It was close to midnight, and Lucifer made the darkest and most powerful prayer yet. He opened a portal and sent his army to the modern world to bring upon the apocalypse and cause the collapse of society. First, he had his evil entities roam the earth. Once that happened, nowhere was safe. These evil entities only had one goal, and that was to scare and make their presence known to humans, and maybe even intimidate, so they could drain their energy through fear.
Meanwhile, Lucifer used the last of his power by causing fire and pure destruction on the planet. Vehicles went up in flames, meteors were crashing into the earth, cities burned to the ground, severe storms and tornadoes swept across the Midwest, and crops started to fail. Eventually, Lucifer started to die as a result of using up all his power. Evil started to fade away, and all of Europe started making its way back to normal. But 1 week later, France suffered another tragedy. Queen Alice had tragically passed, and till this day, it's unknown what caused this to happen. We can only assume that it may have been King Heinrich, Lucifer, and his evil entities. There's a lot of concern that there might be another battle across Europe. The four kingdoms are at risk of falling, and if they do, things will take a turn for the worse.